Beautiful Sunday morning, afternoon, my apologies. And it's not Sunday, it's Saturday. I'm off to a great start already. Here in the Netherlands, it's a warm weekend, which reminds me of the summertime that's ahead. So I thought we'd look into that. Um, Summer is a great time for holidays and vacations, but the summertime is not the only time for holidays and vacations. So let's get into it on why holidays and vacations are important in your world and how you can add them to your world. My name is Ilse. I am a magic wielding dragon companion and a creator of worlds, and I'm here to help you in your author journey. So I would say let's share our experiences. Let me know what you are doing in your world with holidays and vacations, and I will share my experiences with you. And in about a minute, I will have to take a very little break because I totally forgot to make my signature, the kind of signature drink, my hot chocolate that I always have with me while I'm writing. But I totally forgot to make it, or rather, I totally forgot to start the microwave, which is an issue if you want hot chocolate, even with this hot weather that we have this weekend. So, holidays, why are they important in your world? The way I see it, holidays. Wait, before I go any further, let me check if I have audio. I mean, 2 weeks ago we didn't for the first 20 minutes. Thank you to my community members for calling that out. So let me check first to make sure that we actually have sound. Yes, we have sound. Good. That's a big relief for me. So, wait, well, before we get into holidays, let me just tell you about the last few weeks. Oh, and that's the mark for my hot chocolate. One moment, please. And here I am back again with my hot chocolate. I feel that sometimes a messy start is beginning to be normal for me, but that's okay. I don't mind. That's just me being me. Shall we say that? So, holidays and the importance of holidays. Why do I think holidays are important in your world? There are a number of reasons. Holidays here on Earth are often connected to religious holidays, religious events, I should say, like Christmas, Easter. I don't know the exact events for the Muslim celebrations, let me put it that way. But they have certain feasts as well after a fasting period, for example. So several holidays here on Earth are connected to religious events. Other holidays might be connected to things that happen in your country. For example, we have here in the Netherlands King's Day and Liberation Day quite close to each other. So oftentimes the period between those two events is taken as a holiday, whereas schools are free and such. It gives the connection with your world and with what is happening in your world, but not only at that moment. It's not just that there is a celebration going on, or that we are remembering certain events. It's those holidays also mark some things that happened in the past and that we still like to remember. And that is part of our culture. And that is why I think it is important to include holidays in your world, because it tells you something about the culture your characters are living in, or where they are thrusted into because of situations, or where they are visiting, for example. If I look at Tergné, I have people visiting the Silk and Bamboo Archipelago, the Silk and Bamboo Empire, and there is when the book starts, when the first book starts, you will see that there is a turtle release event going on. It is a very special event, and even though it's only that one day, it is considered a holiday of sorts, because people will gather for that event, and celebration or certain processions will be done, and much more. So it shows how the culture of the Silk and Bamboo Empire works at that moment. I mean, it can change in the future, you know. Holidays don't need to be always the same, because your culture evolves. So it's important to also keep in mind how that holiday fits in your world right now, at the moment of writing, or at the moment that it plays in your story, I should say, but also how it was in the past, and maybe how it will be in the future, if that is important to your story, because it also shows progression or decline, if that is the matter, and it shows that your world changes. But it can also show that certain things in your world remain the same, and that can also be very important for your characters, that they have something familiar to return to, for example. It can also show differences between people who have a lot of money in your world, and people who are from the lower working classes, for example. People who are from the lower working classes might not even be able to celebrate a holiday like people from the aristocrats might be able to. And that really shows the difference between the different people, the different people in your world. It can also show the difference between various cultures in your world. It's not, how shall I say this? It's not logical to have a world that has only one specific culture that everyone adheres to. A village, if you have only one village, if your story only plays in one village, okay, you might have just one culture. Um, Unless you have someone visiting from outside that village. That could be someone who comes from a total different culture and views the village and everything that happens there from his or her point of view, and who will compare everything they see and in that one village with what they are used to in their own hometown, for example. And they might compare it. They might be pleasantly surprised. They might be astonished by things that are happening. I think, for example, when you hear about, I read an article a little while ago. It was about I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Dida, kitchen sounds. Yes. And yes, they're often connected to celestial events that indeed as well. You'd say like midsummer, midwinter, the equinox. Yes. And apparently winter holidays is something that started to relieve the spending of firewood in the schools about 100 years ago. It's end February. Most people now think it's for skiing holidays. Yes. So that's where you see the difference as well. How it was 100 years ago and how it is now. I remember from my youth, and yes, I'm talking about whatever, more than 30 years ago. I remember from my youth that we were celebrating Carnival in here in the Netherlands. And my brother's birthday is in February, and we happened to celebrate his, or I should say, Carnival is related to Easter here in the Netherlands. Don't ask me the specifics. I know there's a difference of 6 weeks between them. Why? I knew that, but I don't remember it anymore. But I do remember that back in the days we had Carnival around my brother's birthday, and that was really weird. And it still sometimes is that way. It is how it is connected to Easter. So that varies. And that also shows the change in your world. In our case, in our family, in the Netherlands. Did you say you have a person who lives in a small village like the one you described? He's from, like the one I described, my apologies. He's from Madayan, which is a clearly different culture. He's married to the local taverner. Ooh. Fasting, that's the event 6 weeks before Easter. Right, that's it. And I do know that way back when Carnival originally started here in the Netherlands as a feast for the lower class people. They would dress up and such and make fun of the aristocrats. Let me put it straight. That is what I learned in history lessons. So I wasn't there back then. But that is what I learned in history lessons. I can still see the books in front of me where that was explained, in which it was explained. It was incredible. So if it was already related to Easter and to the fasting event, that's something I don't remember. But right now it's really related to the Easter event, to the Easter and fasting event. And I do know that at the end of Carnival here in the Netherlands usually starts, I think, if I'm correct, if there's anybody from the Netherlands who actually celebrates Carnival, because I don't, please correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm correct, Carnival started Friday night and it ends effectively at Tuesday night. And on Wednesday, those who celebrate Carnival will go to church and will get, as we call it, het askruisje, or it's a cross made on your forehead, made with ash. I suppose it was ash. I don't know if they still use that. And that is to signify the start of the fasting event. Nowadays, I have to be honest, I feel that people celebrate Carnival more as just celebrating Carnival, instead of having it really related to Easter, and to the fasting event. That's my view as an outsider, and I come from a province and from a town where Carnival was really celebrated. I mean, I was born there, and but I never really had a thing for Carnival. It just didn't work for me. And for those, as we say in the Netherlands, boven de rivieren, or in English, above the rivers, those higher up north, they usually don't celebrate Carnival either, but they will go skiing or somewhere else on vacation. So yeah, those are the many things that you can use holidays and events in your world. And it doesn't have to be related to religious events, like I said. Like I said earlier about King's Day here in the Netherlands. And there are, of course, in the United States, the 4th of July. Those are the big events that I know. I'm pretty sure there are lots more events that are not related to religion, that also are regarded as holidays. Dida, you say it was the point where people could start on the second half of the food storage, the midway split between two harvests. Oh, is that it? Okay, I had no idea. I learned a new thing today again. Always good to learn new things. So, like I said, there are multiple reasons why I think including holidays is important for your world building and for your world, for your characters, and for your story. Now, I didn't go into why it's important for your story. Let me go into that as well. Your characters go through their character development, they go through the story, and it might bring them to other places. It might bring them to other times if you are writing a time traveling story, be it in the past or be it in the future. I mean, you can have both. And I should say that correctly. They might find things that are related to a holiday. And for your story begins in point A. Let me put it that way. And it gradually develops into point Z, if that's the end of your story. During that timeline, you will see that your characters will hear things from other people. They will observe things in other cities, more things like that. And those events can influence your story. For example, okay, just taken out of the blue, you have a character who goes from her hometown, and she has to make a business trip to, I don't know, another country. Let's do that. And when she arrives in that other country, she finds out that there's a holiday going on. that in itself might not be a problem. It might even be a lot of fun to join. But she's there on a business trip after all. So what does that mean for her business trip? Will it delay her business trip? Will it cause her to not be able to have the appointments that she had expected to be able to make? Or arrange things, I don't know, shipment of local produce. Let's say that she was there to, talking about my chocolate, let's say she was there to arrange the shipment of cacao beans to her hometown. I know it's not, it doesn't matter. Just go with the flow. Go with me. Bear with me. She is there to arrange the shipment of cacao beans to her hometown, because people in her hometown make chocolate bars and make cacao for hot chocolate and loads of other things. She arrives in that place, in that country, and finds out there's a holiday going on. Now, you can participate in the holiday, but what does that mean for the shipment? Is the shipment being delayed? Is the produce even, has it been harvested? Has it been kept for some reason that she doesn't know about, that she wasn't informed about? Is the event that is going on perhaps related to the cacao beans? Is it perhaps the celebration of the harvest of cacao beans, and she is invited to join the celebrations as one of the buyers of the cacao beans, because for that country, for that place that she's going to, she is an important buyer. So the people want her to be there, for example. Or the opposite, people don't want her to be there and they will sabotage everything, and that shipment of cacao is delayed for days or weeks. Those are all possibilities to influence your story just with that little event of celebrating the harvest of the cacao beans. So there are multiple ways that you can use holidays and events in your world that influence your story. Dida, you say, but why would people arrange a business visit when they know there's a festival going on? I think there's a purpose for letting her see a festival. Maybe they're celebrating the harvest. Yeah, that was just what I was talking about, indeed. Yeah, and like I said, yeah, we'll see. And did you say good spot to intro some intrigue? Yep, most certainly. See, that's the beauty of things. That is, you can use events like that to also foreshadow things, to lay the seeds of some schemes that will go on. That is something that I'm doing also in the Tergane Chronicles. I can't tell you guys too much about that, but let's just say you should keep your eyes peeled from the moment you start to read the book. But there are various reasons why someone would, if I look at Dida's question, why would people arrange a business visit when they know there's a festival going on? It might be, for example, let's say that it's, let me think. The setting is a couple of 100 years ago. Now I'm going by some history of the Netherlands. Cacao would come probably from Asia, Indonesia, a couple of 100 years ago, with the oh damn it, I used to know that. It's the VOC. It's the United Eastern Indian Company. I think that's the English translation. So back then you didn't have the option or the communication that we have today. Let's put it in a fantasy setting, and because a couple of 100 years ago it wasn't really normal for women to have a company or to be leading such expeditions. So let's put it in a fantasy setting, and it's normal for her to go there. But she doesn't have the communication options like we have today. So she might know, and her companions might know about the possibility of a festival, about how shall I say that? They might have heard some things that are regarded as rumors. Or they think that the festival has ended by the time they have arrived. So maybe they even planned their visit in a way that they would arrive after the festival has ended, or so they think. But let's just say the ship they traveled with happened to catch some favorable currents, some favorable winds, and they arrived sooner than they expected. So instead of arriving, let's just say 5 days or a week after the festival ended, that's a never mind. They arrived a week before the festival. They arrived a week before they were expected to arrive. So instead of the festival having ended, they land smack dab in the middle of the festival. That changes things. On one hand, you might think, oh, it brings the story forward quicker, until things happen at the festival. Those can be positive things, but those can also be negative things. They might impact the story in various ways, all depending on what you want or what you envision or what you discover there at that Harvest Fest event. So that's a way to that's how it can influence your story. So, is there anything else? Is there another reason why I think it's important to include it? Well, there's one thing I didn't talk about: vacations. The way I see it, there's a difference between holidays and vacations. Holidays are often related to events, but we also say we're going on a holiday abroad. So that depends on your interpretation. Vacation is something I regard as you go on a vacation, you go somewhere else. And the vacation part, especially if you are writing a fantasy story which is set in, let's say, a medieval-ish setting, then the vacation might be very different from what we know right now. Vacation might be that people, let's say the aristocrats, they will go to, let's think, they can go to places that are expensive to go to, Um, they can travel because they can pay for the carriages, they can pay for the horses, they can pay for the people to guide them, things like that. But the lower class the lower working class, the people who hardly have any money, they don't have money to go on a vacation. They're already glad if they can pay the bills, if they can buy food, if they can buy medicine if it's needed. So there's a huge difference, and that shows the difference between two people in one and the same town or one and the same country, for example. Now, if you look at the difference between cultures, you might see, for example, let's look at the Chinese New Year, for example. Here in Europe or here in the Netherlands, we celebrate New Year's, and oftentimes people go to a bar or just go to friends. But here in the Netherlands, we don't need to travel far. I mean, at the most, if you go from the north to the south, you'd have to travel, I think, 400 kilometers. So that's a couple of hours. And here in the Netherlands, it's not usual that we stay for days with a family and friends. We might visit our parents, we might visit our grandparents, either during the Christmas holidays or New Year. But usually it's just for a few hours or maybe for a day, and that's pretty much it. If you look at Chinese New Year, for example, people will actively travel back to their hometown, for example, if they live in the city and they came from outside the city. They will travel back to their hometown, they will be with family, but they will also often bring gifts for their family from their hometown. And you see that there's a huge growth in traffic, for example. There are many people who are traveling outside of the cities, causing traffic jams and things like that. That's a huge difference with how we here in the Netherlands experience it. That's quite a difference just between cultures. Now, if you have a fantasy setting, you could think, okay, what's the difference between cultures in a fantasy setting? Basically, everything you can make it. And one culture might not be accustomed to having free days. They might just work 24/7 because working is the highest achievement you can get. So, well, working 24/7 is a bit much, but 7 days a week, let's put it that way. So they might not be used to having... Oh, wait. Okay, let's just keep it at that. They might not be used to having it, to having free days. While people from another culture might be used to, I don't know, work 4 days and have 3 days off. Or maybe they keep on working and save those 3 days until they have, let's say, one or two weeks saved, and then go on a vacation. So those are all cultural differences that you can use in your story. Did you say calendar celebrations and taking time off? Yes, there's a difference. Yeah, indeed. And in your world, they have 10-day weeks with 2.5 days off a week. That's awesome. So would they, in your world, also join those 2.5 days so that they have a period of 5 days off? Or would it just only be at the end of the week, for example? Those are all things that you can think about. And do people have the option to travel? Um, do they have the means to travel? Is it possible to go outside their village, outside their country, to other villages, other countries? Those are all things to think about, because what we regard as normal in our everyday Earth might be vastly different in your fantasy world. If I look at Tergne, for example, people in Dragon City, they live in a huge cave. Most of them, they know they live in a cave, of course. Some of them have been outside the cave. They know how things are there. The dragon companions have, of course, been outside the cave because they have missions outside and they have to train and such. So that's a whole different ball game for them. Merchants, other travelers have been outside the cave as well, of course. But many people also don't know any other life than being in the cave. It's not a really dark place, so that's that's a good thing. But you'll learn more about that later on. This cave is really huge. It's about I think it's about 40 kilometers long. So that's quite long. Now, if you look at our history, traveling to another city while having no cars, but instead a carriage or a horse, or you'd have to go by foot, you wouldn't often travel to a city that's 20 kilometers away. So you would remain mostly around your district that you live, around your village that you live. So if you were to go on a vacation, you might see in this case the other side of Dragon City as a vacation because of the enormous distance that is between the eastern part and the western part of the city. Going from Dragon City, for example, to the Circumambou Empire, the Circumambou Archipelago, you need either be on a dragon or any other aerial creature, or you need to go by boat, or you're an aquatic race yourself and you can go through the water, but that's a whole different ballgame. If you are going by dragon or another aerial creature, you usually are used to that, and you might have a certain connection with the dragons. You will have a companion connection. With the other creatures, you might also have a certain connection, and it would be normal for you. And having access to the dragon or one of the other creatures might be easy for you. But for people who would need to use a boat or ship, you'd probably need a lot of money, because you would first have to travel to I spontaneously just lost the name. Devil's Port. Yes, I got it again. Devil's Port. And then you would have to be able to board a ship. And that's not an easy thing to do. You'd have to have money to persuade the captain to give you lodgings on the ship. So that again shows that people need money or need any other means to be able to procure a passage to that other country. So that again shows the difference between the several people in your story and between the several locations in your story. Dida, you say the first day of the week and the last are the days off, often together, and half a day on the fifth day. Okay, okay. And this is because half decan and decan days are the temple days, and the first day of the week is sacred. Oh, nice, nice. And you say 20 kilometers in a day is achievable on foot in the old days, because they would be very used to walking. Yeah, but then wouldn't that mean that you would arrive at that place but not go back again? I mean, here we just go for to another city, and it will take me, if I come from my hometown to another city, it will take me 20 minutes to drive with a car. Similar with when I'm going with the train. But if I were to have to travel that by foot, I don't think I would go back on the same day. I would want to spend a lot more time in that city to make my trip worthwhile, to make it worthwhile that I traveled so long while walking there. But that's just how I feel. I know processions were done in the past, but those were usually religious processions, I think, to one of the biggest cities here. But it's all how your character perceives that, and how normal it is for people to go to other cities, to walk a lot, or have other means to travel. So yeah, these are things that you can also keep in mind. And I mean, if you think about also, if you were to travel 20 kilometers on foot, and you would go for a short break, how much would you take with you? I mean, if I would go to another town here in a neighborhood at that distance, I could put a lot of things in bags on my bike, if I were to have a bike, or in my car. I mean, I can stash a lot in my car, and my car is not that big, but I can stash a lot in it. So I can take a lot with me if I wanted to do that. But if you are by foot, you can't take that much with you. So if you would have a character who would walk the distance from town A to town B, and that would be roughly 20 kilometers, think about what that character would take with her on that journey. What would the possibilities of buying food or water, for example, or any other drink, be for her along the way? I mean, I just take a bottle of water with me, and I'm in the other town in 20 minutes, and I can go to a lunchroom there and have lunch, have a lunch, and that's all good. But if you have to walk 20 kilometers, things become a little bit different. Did you say no, one would need to find a place to sleep? Yeah, indeed. And people going for example, the markets to sell your stuff, you'd, for example, sleep under your hand cart with goods, etc. One would try to sell with better profit. Exactly. So those are all things you can keep in mind, especially related to holidays and vacations. Talking about people who would want to sell things, talking about Dida's example, if you would go to another place, let's keep that 20 kilometers alive. If you go to another place, you would, and you're a merchant, you want to take things with you from your own hometown, and sell them in that other village or city. But you will also need a place to sleep. You need protection from the rain. You could indeed sleep under the cart, but you might also have a tent or something. You might have a carriage or wagon that you can sleep in. So there are several ways to think about. And of course there's the issue of safety. You might, especially if you travel with multiple people, multiple merchants, or if you travel by yourself as a merchant, you might really want to get some people who will guard your wares. And you would need a reason to go to that other city besides just selling your stuff. If that other city, for example, has a certain festival, or if there is a holiday going on, or some religious event, which can be oftentimes, especially in fantasy stories. So those are all things that you can look at for why would a character travel there. Do they have certain wares that are, or that can be very useful while celebrating that certain holiday? Or are they going there to buy things instead and take mementos or something that remembers about that event, take it back with them to their own hometown and sell those items in their own hometown? So those are all various ways to work with your story, to work with holidays and vacations in your story and in your world building. Did you say drink from the streams? Well, you'd have, yeah, if there are indeed a lot of streams, yes, and no need to buy stuff. You're Norwegian here, you can still drink water from most streams. Yeah, here in the Netherlands things are a little bit different. Hammock and a rain canvas, yeah, that's easy traveling in your world. And guard your wares, that's for the rich merchants. Yes, exactly. They don't pull their own hand cards. Double charge on your goods is a good reason to carry sellables. Exactly. So those are all things you can think about, things your characters might see happening in your worlds, and things that are related to the holidays and to the vacations. I mean, they might be just traveling for the fun of it for a few days, your main characters, and they happen upon that merchant who is selling their wares, or who is transporting, that's the word I was looking for, who is transporting their wares to the other city and or back home. So yeah, it's a variety of holidays and events and things that might happen in your world that might, I mean, it might not directly influence your characters, but they might just observe it. But like I said earlier, it might also very directly influence your characters. Oh, I thought I had highlighted that. Yeah, talked about that as well. So, now that we have looked into the importance of having holidays and vacations in your world, let's see if we can work with that. Did you say catch a ride with someone to relocate might be one of the oldest in the book? Yeah, and characters often need to relocate to get into their intended path. That's a good one to remember. So let's see if we can do something with that. In the second chapter that I currently am writing, my characters will meet several people who are there not only for selling and buying their wares, because there's the turtle release going on, but in 2 weeks' time, roughly 2 weeks' time, there's also another really big event coming, and people really want to stay for that. And that's something that might already be hinted at in the second chapter. So, let's go for 25 minutes of writing for those who want that or other creative things. And if you want to work longer, just please work longer. 25 minutes for me is a max at the moment to work, to write to write at. So I will check back with you in 25 minutes. Let's see if I still know how to change between the settings. I forgot one thing. I knew there was something. Here we go. 25 minutes starting right now. Enjoy. See you later, Dita. Thank you for joining us. And have fun back. Have fun outside. Welcome, JC. It's great to have you here. Oh, let's talk about that after the sprint. And that is the end of our first creative sprint. How did it go for you all? Dida left us with a last thought. Her main thought for why writing celebrations and vacations is to make the story believable, credible. It brings a reality sense into the story, making it easier for the reader to believe in. I completely agree with her. It's those things, those details that make your story so much better. And Dida said, see you later. Jesse Henry, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy to see you here. And you're here, you say you're here and you're currently working on a space opera and you never thought of the holidays or vacations of the far future. Well, your characters and your world might just surprise you. I don't know how far into the future your story plays, but if you look at our current Earth, our countries, all countries all over the world have so many holidays, so many events and so many celebrations that I think some of that could still be there in the future, unless of course, I mean, I don't know the premise of your story, but unless of course the Earth was completely invaded and the other people invading Earth would have crushed anything that had to do with our cultures. Remember, that is also a tactic from the past. It's not something that can only be done by alien races in the future, as you might have seen in films or in TV series. This is something that has actually been done by occupiers and occupiers who wanted to completely suppress the culture of other people they had conquered. They wanted to remove all signs of their culture. So that can actually be something in your story. Maybe a character finds a remnant of something, maybe a book hidden somewhere or a diary hidden somewhere that tells about these ancient events. And wait, let me take this off, that's better. That tells about these ancient events, these ancient celebrations, and people might be interested in that. On a more positive note, you could also maybe have celebrations for when two people of various planets, of two different planets I should say, meet for the first time, and years after that. If I look at Tegne, for example, I mean, that's not set in the future, but in Tegne, Dragon City and Silken Bamboo Empire have a relationship with each other, and they celebrate that every year, and every 50 years out of the top of my head. No, every 48 years, my apologies, every 48 years, they celebrate that with a marriage between the two countries, between the empire and the city-state. In essence, way back when, and I'm really going back way back when, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, people, or Dragon City, the people from Dragon City saved the empire. There's a whole lot of history going on there. You might read a few things about that in the books later on. But it is something that is remembered all over the years. So that is something that still is very active right now, hundreds of years later. Another thing that is very, very active in Tergene, that has actually changed the calendar of Tergene, is, for example, the Big Divide. The Big Divide is the moment that plays, out of the top of my head, 980 years before the story, before the start of the story. The Big Divide is the moment that magic essentially became rampant in a way, and it started to destroy, it started to tear up Tergene. And eventually they managed to, with the help of the gods, or rather the gods did it for the people, they were finally convinced by the people to save the planets and to save the various peoples. That moment in time caused the calendar to completely shift, because instead of the new year falling about 2 months before that moment, the new year is now falling on that moment, the moment that the Big Divide was stopped by the deities. And it is a week of remembrance and a week of celebrations that the people have around this time, around that time period. So there are lots of ways to think about how you can include that. JC, can I call you JC, by the way? You say, yes, holidays bring people together. That is interesting. Is the wedding arranged? Yes, the wedding technically is arranged, but there are ways to do it in another way, and that will become apparent in the books, but I can't talk about that yet. And JC, you say you understand you have a good foundation in world. I have a good. Oh, thank you. Good foundation in world building. Well, Tergene is a world I've been thinking about for years. I originally started with Tergene. Back then it was called, I called it the Dragons, something with the Dragon Seer. I don't know exactly anymore. And it evolved. It evolved to what it is right now. And I remember the very first time I began with what is now the Tergene Chronicles, I envisioned, I knew that I wanted to write a story with dragons, and back then I called them dragon riders, and mages. But I didn't know exactly how it would fall out, because at that moment I couldn't quite envision where the dragons were going to live. My dragons weren't like Christopher Paolini's dragons, where basically there was only one dragon left, and then we discovered more, but I will let you read those books. I don't want to spoil them for you. In my world, in Tergene, dragons are very much alive in a great variety of sizes. There are dragons that can essentially fit on the top of your pinky, but there are also dragons that are, I don't know, the size of a horse or the size of a small plane, for example. So you need a place where these dragons can live, but these dragons also need to feed. So I had no idea how I would do that on Earth. I mean, I was at a total loss until I found photos and footage of the Hang Son Dune caves, and that opened the world for me. And then Tergene really started to grow, and also the cultures and basically everything that has to do with Tergane really started to grow. So I've worked on it for a long time. So thank you, but thank you for your compliment. I like that, and I hope I'm able to convey that in my books as well. Tergane is such a beautiful world, and it brings me to it often brings me so many surprises. And I hope that you guys can read that, can see that happening in Tergane in the books. So, oh, you say yes, it's fine that I call you JC. Thank you very much. So, in the previous session, we looked at why holidays and vacations are important in your story, but how do you actually build it into your story? There are different ways. I already hinted at a few things in the previous session, like looking at Earth's holidays and vacations, what we do now, but also what we used to do in the past. What Dita and I already talked about. Look at, for example, your religions. Look at important moments for your world or for your planets, if you have that. Talking about, for example, your space opera, JC. You have several planets, I assume. I mean, I don't know about your story yet, so I assume you have several planets. And when people from other planets meet for the first time, it either will go good or it will go bad, or maybe something in between. But those can be key moments that might be celebrated. If you look at what's that movie called? Independence Day with Will Smith and oh god, where the aliens land and they eventually destroy the mothership or something like that. I think it was Will Smith, and I think it was called Independence Day. Bill, I don't know who I can see the actor playing the president, but I don't remember his name. I think it was Bill. It could have also been his character name. But you see that they took the 4th of July not only as the Independence Day of America, but also the Independence Day of Earth at that moment, because they were going to destroy the mothership. My apologies for everyone who hasn't seen the movie, but the movie is, I think, a couple of decades old, so I hope you guys can forgive me for that. At that moment, Independence Day, the 4th of July, not only was a American day of celebration, but it became a day of celebration for the complete Earth. That is how different it can be, that is how important it can become. You could have, what's that series called? Not Stargate, but I don't remember. It's also an old series with alien beings who do not quite have a body like we do, but they brought different transportation methods. They brought health medical things and such, so that their first the first meeting with them and them getting used to Earth and the Earthlings getting used to them might be a big celebration. Um, I think it also was, but I'm not 100% sure anymore. It could be a big celebration in your world, because that other people, that those aliens or those alien people, have brought so much advancement that our lives, or that the lives of your characters and basically everyone in your world has become so much better. So those are things to think about. Jesse, you say you do think there might be an All Faiths holiday? Yes, it was. You remember it. Okay, perfect. Um, yeah, it's those are just a few ways to get a holiday in your story. Think about, or in your world, think about the myths of creation. Think about early religions here on Earth. For example, the Druids and the Celtics, they had certain events they celebrated. Those events were partially included in Christianity, for example. Some were, some weren't. And those bring about holidays and events that we celebrate. And that could be also the case for your world. If I look at Tergane has lots of deities. And each deity is celebrated in one way or another. And depending on where you live, you might actually get a day free, or specific hours, or you might get a certain time to pray. But or not but and there are special holidays around certain deities. For example, deities that specifically were thought to have a lot to do with the end of the big divide are deities who are very much celebrated and have their own days of celebration in Tergane. Deities like Ayla, who is a deity who brings life but who also takes care of the lost children. She is celebrated in another way as well. There are the deities who make the tapestry of life. They have their own days of celebration as well, because they are thought to be very important in the lives of people. And it's just, how shall I say that? Those are all religious events, of course, but you can also think about the harvest time, or the springtime when new crops are being sowed. The seeds are putting in the ground. And of course the harvest time when crops are harvested. In Tergane, the Silk and Bamboo Empire not only has specific harvest times for crops, but for them they also have specific celebrations for coral, for example, and for pearls. That those are related to aquatic events. Because Silk and Bamboo, the empire is located in what is now called the Silk and Bamboo Archipelago, which is an archipelago of several big islands, but also thousands of small islands, or hundreds, I think hundreds of small islands. And so much is connected to the ocean and to what happens in the ocean. Like the turtle release day. There is a turtle release day in the beginning of the year. There is a first turtle release day, as it is called. And there is a last turtle release day every year. These are two big events that are celebrated. And of course, there are multiple turtle release days between those two, but these two are the most important. And these two are celebrated with special rituals and festivities that are done. So those are also things you can think about. Jesse, you say yes, there will be Alien First Contact holiday and an End of War holiday as well. Excellent, excellent. And what are your characters doing right then? What are the events happening during those celebrations? And in another section of your story, there will be Imperial birthdays. Interesting, interesting. Oh, you have also more of an empire in your space opera? That sounds exciting. Tish, welcome in, welcome in. For those watching who don't know Tish, Tish is a wonderful author of cozy mysteries. Do I say that right, Tish? And she has her first book coming up in September. Tish, I want to say 15 September. Is that the correct date? Please let us know in the chat. And let me show you guys. Oh, wait. Come on, work with me. Sometimes my computer doesn't want to really work with me. Let me give you guys also Tish's channel link, because I think it's important that you guys know that as well. She is a wonderful author and I love having her. It's so great that you are here. Thank you very much. And please check out Tish's stream as well. Here it is. And Tish, yes, I did remember it correctly. Thank you. Cozy Mystery, Not Before You Enter. That is a very intriguing title. Release date September 15th. Guys, follow Tish to get the latest on her book. And be sure to support her by buying her book when it becomes available. And Tish is waving at JC. Here's the link. Please go visit Tish and give her a like and subscribe when you get the chance. Tish, you're getting your caffeine fix. Perfect, perfect. And JC saying hi to Tish. Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm so happy to see you join here as well. So yeah, more ways to include holidays and vacations in your world. JC, you were talking about space opera. Do people in your world all have access to space travel, or other means of traveling around the planet, for example, that they can easily travel from one side to the other side of a planet instead of taking it, I don't know, if I were to go from here, the Netherlands, to, let's say, America, USA, I think it would take me about 12 hours in the most positive way. I think, I'm not 100% sure. If I were to go to Indonesia, for example, I've been there several years ago, it took me almost a day. Well, 17 hours all in, I think, including waiting time at, God, what was that? I don't remember. But we were going on a holiday, on a vacation. Well, that's here in the Netherlands we call it vakantie. So vacation is more natural to me. It sounds more natural. to go somewhere to celebrate your day off, or your prolonged period of time for a day off. While holiday to me is more related to specific events, like a Christmas holiday or a Sinterklaas here in the Netherlands, things like that. So yeah, that's different. It feels different to me, but at the same time, I think holiday and vacation are quite similar. But since I've got a few people here in the chat who actually speak English, I'd love to hear your um, ideas about that. What the actual difference between a holiday and a vacation is. JC, you say yes. In the story, there is FTL travel and faster vehicles. Excellent. So FTL, that's with the light travel thing. I'm not quite into sci-fi. I mean I love sci-fi shows, but I'm not into the details. So I get all these things mixed up. My apologies for that. So there's FTL travel and faster vehicles. Do all the people in your worlds easily have access to that? Because that already makes a difference for traveling. I mean, if you all have access, it's very easy to go to a country on the other side of the planet. But if you don't have access to that fast travel, then you might still have the limitations that we currently have, or that we maybe had a couple of 100 years ago, for example. JC, you say the premise is that the main character was abducted for over near a decade, and then she comes back to Earth. Oh, wow. I can't imagine how such a character would feel. That must be. Was she young, or was she already an adult when she was abducted that decade ago? Tissue say a holiday is usually universal here in the state, but vacation is an individual thing. Ah, okay, that way. I understand. Perfect. Thank you for the explanation. And JC, you say about FTL faster than light travel. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And Tissue say about JC's concept. It sounds intriguing, and you love that concept. Yes, same. I mean, it's like I said, I don't read a lot of space opera. I've started with The Expanse, which I think is an amazing story, and I've watched so many futuristic series. I mean, I've watched Star Trek. I think I've pretty much watched all the series, and mostly all the movies. But I've also watched Babylon. The one with that series that has that one pilot that's clearly another race, who controls the ship, and he's called Pilot, literally. With one of the characters is called John. I do know that. Stargate is one of my favorite series from the past. I've watched The Expanse multiple times, I think. So yeah, I mean, it's not that I'm not familiar with space things, but I'm not deep into it. So yeah, there's a lot I actually don't know. JC, you say holiday and vacation can be used interchangeably, but holidays can spend at home. Vacation can mean travel. Yeah, that's the impression I also got. Yeah. And JC, you say she is a teen and comes back as an adult. Okay, so she was abducted as a teen, and she comes back as an adult. Okay, interesting. That's so she has a conscious experience of living on Earth, of being with her family. I mean, it's not like when you are, I don't know, a baby, you don't have that many memories. But when you are a teen, that's completely different. And then growing up in an alien environment, no matter how much it looks like Earth or not, I mean, she is not with her parents and with her family, or is she? Has she been abducted with her family? I mean, that could also be the case. So it's really incredible. That's quite the trauma she might has been through. Um, I can see lots of possibilities for story development and character development there. Tish, you say, "Wow, that's deep." JC, I would Tish would love to read her character growth in your story. Same. Farscape, yeah, that's the one I meant. Farscape, I love that series. It's, I mean, you. If we look back at certain series right now, series from decades ago, and we look at it with our experience and our view of how things are right now, some series are really just, they don't stand the test of time. But that's okay because those series were made decades ago. If you just take off those glasses that say that we have to see it with today's quality, then you can see what the series are, then you can see the true quality of those series. But those were such great series. JC, you say you remember that show, she was taken alone and a lot has happened. Oh, you remember Farscape? Okay, yeah. And about your character, she was taken alone and a lot has happened. Oh my god! I mean, I can only imagine how traumatizing it would be if you were taken alone as a teenager and not only be abducted, but abducted and being brought to another planet of all places. I mean, it's already terrifying if you're being abducted and being brought to another country or another place in the same country. That has happened here in the Netherlands as well. I mean, that's already very terrifying for the kids, for the children. But being taken away from your family and then being brought off planet to a totally different planet with a different culture and with possibly a completely different living environment, that must be really terrifying. Although, depending on the personality of the character, it can also be exciting, depending on what she liked, and how her relationship with her family and friends was, things like that. So I can see multiple possibilities there for how she would deal with being abducted and having to live in such a different place. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And Jesse, you say Farscape is one of your favorites. Yeah, I mean it is such an incredible series, and I mean you can't compare it to series nowadays, but it's also, you shouldn't compare it because on its own it's just such a wonderful series, and that is just, I think it was, besides Star Trek and the whole franchise of Star Trek, I think Farscape was really the first to introduce new races that were alien and that might not even be hostile, or less hostile, from what I remember. Of course, there's also Stargate, with the Goa'uld and races like that. So that's a whole different ball game. And the Wraiths, I think Stargate had also the Wraiths, and of course other peoples from other planets who all seem to speak English. That's the difference between now and back then. But yeah, it was fun. JC, you say When thinking of everything that happens to your character, it makes you wonder if you're being too harsh. Well, you know the adagium. Is that called adagium? The saying. Let's put it that way. When you've thought of the worst thing that can happen to your character and they've been through that, just put them through worse. And once they've been through that, put them through worse again, until basically there's nothing worse anymore and they've grown through everything and they finally reached the point that they were developing to. JC, new races, the living ship. Yeah, the living ship, that's really so incredible. I love that. I love that. So yeah, it's if you think about series like that, and going back to the subject of holidays and vacations, if you think about series like that, like Star Trek, like Stargate, Farscape, Babylon 5, etc., there are, in one way or another, moments of first contact, moments that people learn about new techniques, new technology, be it medical technology or technology to travel to other planets, more things like that. First contact moments are often celebrated if it is good contact, and you can see that it can be celebrated differently in various countries, for example, because various countries might have other ideas on how to celebrate it, but it could also be a celebration for the entire planet. I hope that if and when we ever get to go to other planets and meet other people, that we can be civilized enough to be warm and understanding instead of a threat. But it also, of course, depends on how the other people are. Think about Worf in Star Trek. God, what is his name? His race again? I can't say it right now. But their initial contact, or their response, I should say, is the aggression, to show aggression to the people they meet. If you look at, I think, the Maori in New Zealand, they also have a certain way of greeting new people, which might seem aggressive, but it might seem normal to other people. If we take it in fantasy settings, right? There are so many ways to work with that, to remember it. Dances like that, those ritualistic greetings, can become part of celebrations of first contact. Because it shows how people met, and it shows the importance of the way people met and how things moved on from there. JC, the Klingon. Yes, exactly, that was it. My brain sometimes just gives out on me, and that's not always easy. But yeah, that's currently still the case with me. Hopefully it will be solved over the long time. But yes, the Klingons. It's pretty much a fascinating race, because they are, in the basics, a violent race, or so they are portrayed, I should say. But the fun part is, of course, that each race, no matter how we view them with our human view, each race has his or her own rituals, events, celebrations, holidays. And that is important to remember. I mean, the mages in the White City in Taganay have other celebrations than the people from Dragon City and then the people from Succumbabu. Even their celebrations are even different from the people in Greyhaven, while Greyhaven was essentially part of the White City before the Big Divide. The Big Divide really split up the original city that was there, and one city became the White City and the other became Greyhaven, and they are on opposite sides of the abyss. They how shall I say that? The way that they celebrate the Big Divide is both a way to remember what was lost, the unity of that one city, but also the fact that they are still safe. They sure, parts of the city fell into the abyss, but larger parts were safe, and many of the people were saved. So for both the White City and Greyhaven, and possibly other cities who find themselves in a similar fashion, they have a mixed way of celebrating the Big Divide, the end of the Big Divide. Jesse, you say you agree and you understand. Thank you. And yeah, the Klingon have evolved over the whole Star Trek series. You're absolutely right about that. I think it's a good thing. And I think that's also important to keep in mind for your own fantasy, sci-fi series, books that anyone writes. But especially fantasy and sci-fi series, because oftentimes you will have multiple races, as in really biologically different races. Taganay also has really biological different races. I mean, I have a race that's based on meerkats, just because I love meerkats, so why not? I have a race that's inspired by toads and frogs, because I love frogs, and I was inspired by art by someone that's really from a decade ago or something, that I saw a toad that was really traveling and doing magic and things like that. So I was inspired to make a race that's a mix of toads and frogs, and they are actual races in Taganay. I have mer people. I have human, if you want to call it. I have the small folk. I have so many different races. Some are really because I like the creatures here on Earth, and I made them completely different. Well, not completely different. I made creatures in Taganay that are inspired by the creatures that I love here in my own life, and what we see here on Earth. Especially in fantasy and in sci-fi, we see so many different races that I think it's important to show how races have evolved over time, and how they can evolve in a series, if you are writing a series. Of course, if it is necessary for that race to evolve. If it's not necessary, then don't show it. But just like we humans have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years, a race doesn't come into existence and not change. I mean, I know that sharks, I think, and other aquatic creatures haven't changed for a very long time. But before they came to be what they are now, they have evolved and they have changed. So yeah, those are things to keep in mind if you are writing your story. And it could be that two races on the same planet meet for the first time and have differences, or maybe have similar things that they can celebrate. So those are all things that you can incorporate in your story, in those holiday events where things are celebrated, because it is important for the people in your story. And what Dita earlier said, it shows a relatability to your reader also. JC, you say similar to like how many of us celebrate Christmas, but you do it differently in the US versus the Netherlands. I think so, yeah. Here in the Netherlands, we have 2 days of Christmas. There are still people who will go to church on Christmas Eve. I remember that we did that when we were still children. But at some point we moved to another city and we ended up at a church that was the only church at that moment, with a priest who was utterly drunk. And basically we didn't go to that church anymore. So yeah, that's also something that can cause things, and that can impact your characters. We still have the basics, I think, of Christmas, but yeah, between countries it's always celebrated differently. Yeah. And what do you see as the biggest difference between the US and the Netherlands, for as far as it goes to Christmas celebrations, for example? I'd love to hear that. um, I always think it's inspiring to hear how other cultures celebrate events that we also celebrate, but also cultures that have completely different events. I mean, if you look at Muslims, we here where I live, we have a good Muslim community, um, and I mean good not only as there's a pretty good group, but also they are part of a community, and or at least that's what I see. Um, but I know that Muslims, for example, don't celebrate Christmas. They have other celebrations, and celebrations that we sometimes get to know and get to take part in, as part of getting to know the other religions better and the other people, the Muslim people, better. And I think that's commemorable, and I like that it is being done here in the Netherlands. Um, and if you look at if looking at Christianity, and you see many branches within. You have the Orthodox, but you also have people who are more not that religious. I mean, if I look at myself, I've had my baptism and things like that, but at some point I felt that Catholic Christianity was not truly my religion anymore. For me, I'm not atheist. I believe that there is more, but I'm not convinced about the Catholic Christian values as they are shown to us and as what we are supposed to live by. But that's just my religious. Those are just my religious feelings. JC, you say, well, half of your family goes to church and the other half goes to a party. Yeah. Well, here in the Netherlands, it's you see a shift in Catholicism and how people still participate in that or not. Especially older people will much sooner go to church, especially on Christmas Eve and on the morning of the first Christmas Day. And afterwards, I mean, I remember we did that as children, and then we would go to our grandparents for some time and then had dinner either with our grandparents or just at home. But what we see now also is that where we used to only celebrate Sinterklaas with a lot of presents, or with presents, let me say it that way, it's now shifted to Christmas time. There's quite the shift, because Sinterklaas is still celebrated here in the Netherlands, but it's only one day, and gifts are still given to young children, but by the time they are halfway through their teenage years, you see this shift to having that time, that exchange of gifts on Christmas Day. That is something we've really seen coming from other countries into the Netherlands. It's interesting to see. And JC, you say you're in New York, so Christmas and Hanukkah tend to go together often. That's interesting, because I always thought, but please correct me if I'm wrong, that Hanukkah was on quite different dates than Christmas. But I could be very wrong about that, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But in essence, I think as long as you have a way of celebrating what is important for your religion, for your belief, I mean, there are also people who don't believe in Muslims, Buddhism, and all that, other gods, like in India, there are many gods in India. People who believe in Wicca, for example, who celebrate other things, who don't necessarily celebrate the same holidays as Catholics, for example, but they do celebrate other events that are important in their belief, and I think that is an important thing to include in your story, because for starters, it shows how people in your world view the world around them and experience the world around them. And with the world, I mean not only the physical world, but also the spiritual world. And it could very well be that in your world, the spiritual world is something that works entirely different, or that people don't believe in a spiritual world anymore. Which is of course interesting. If suppose, let's play with that idea. You are hundreds of years in the future. What would it be like for Catholicism, Christianity, Muslim, Buddhism, and all those other religions when people have traveled to other galaxies, to the other end of the universe, I mean, Christianity, Catholicism, we all say you go to heaven or you go to hell. But what is heaven? Before we were able to travel to space, people believed in heaven to be up in the sky. Now we are able to travel into space and later on to Mars. I mean, we can already get to the moon, go to the moon, and Mars is a one-way ticket at the moment. So what does that mean for people who believe that? And what remains from that vision in the future? And what do people celebrate about that particular thing in their vision in the future, in their religion and belief in the future? Those are also things to think about. I mean, would they still believe in a heaven? Would they still believe in gods? Even though they have traveled the galaxy and the universe and have seen nothing that relates to gods as they see them. So, yeah, that would be interesting. JC, you say a cultural shift? Yeah. And they are, but as a season, they are family that have a tree and a menorah. Okay. So that's, that's, okay. That's good to know about Hanukkah. And the solstices, yeah. It's, solstices in Tergane play a role as well. And the fun thing is that originally the New Year was celebrated at the winter solstice. But with the big divide, the end of the big divide, I should say, it happened 2 months after, roughly 2 months after the winter solstice. The New Year shifted to that moment of the big divide, but they still keep the winter solstice and the summer and they keep both solstices still as a celebration, the winter and the summer solstice, because for Tergane, for the people of Tergane, it is still an important moment. So instead of celebrating New Year at the same day as the winter solstice, the winter solstice has now really become a celebration all on its own, comparable to the summer solstice. So you will see things that are done in the summer solstice that will return in the winter solstice in a different way, because it's the winter, but it really relates to the rituals and the things they do during the summer solstice. While before, when they also celebrated the New Year, it might have been different. Of course, that happened almost 1,000 years ago, and as we know here on Earth, in 1,000 years, a lot can happen, and the information that is known is quite different. I mean, we still don't know everything about, let's say, the UK from 1,000 years ago. So, of course, things are also told in stories and in myths and such things like that. So those are also things to keep in mind, whether you're writing a fantasy story or a contemporary story or a sci-fi story. What do people actually have as physical evidence? Do they need physical evidence for the things that happened that they celebrate in the holidays? Yeah. Jesse, you say you haven't come across many stories in the future about spiritualism. That's a tongue breaker for me. Spiritualism or religion. The only representation you can think of is Star Wars. I think you might be quite right about that. Well, in a way, Stargate, the Goa'uld regarded themselves as the gods, I think, if I remember that correctly. But that's I think the only thing. I think you might be right about that. That Stargate is basically with the Goa'ulds is the only thing I can get. Is the closest to religion I can remember playing in sci-fi series. You could perhaps argue that the ancients that built the ring gates in The Expanse could be maybe considered as gods, but there's also the story that the ring builders are a different race and that they had a certain religion. So there's a question about that. But I think you're right. Mostly in sci-fi, there's surprisingly not that much done with religion, and yeah, that surprises me because there is, I mean, we have our religions, we have our beliefs. Why would that change hundreds of years in the future? What would make it so that people don't believe in what they used to believe? What would make it that they wouldn't believe in certain religions anymore, in their beliefs anymore? Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that's also a good point to remember when you are thinking about holidays and events. If you are writing a sci-fi story that plays hundreds or maybe thousands of years in the future, are there still religions? If there are not religions anymore, why? What happened to them? Is there still any evidence left of those religions? If there are still certain holidays that used to be related to specific religions, why are those holidays still there? Those are also good things to think about, because they don't just disappear into nothingness. It's, how shall I say that? I think people also have a certain need to believe in something, and a need for certain rituals, to give them, how shall I say that? To give them strength to help them through life, and death, if that is part of the religion, part of the belief. So what happened that people don't need that anymore? That's I think it's important to think about that in sci-fi stories, because I think people essentially have an innate need for that. Jesse, you say yes, you think so as well. You're sure that there's a story somewhere? Yeah, it would be very interesting to read that or to hear about that. And you say science, technology versus magic religions. We separate them in our minds and we think they are opposing forces. Yeah, that's the fun part, isn't it? We want to think they are not related to each other, but at the same time, you could think they are essentially the same, but we are more tech, we have a more technical view. Like, look at electricity. If you would show electricity to people who, I don't know, live in the rainforest, have never encountered anything like that, they would think it's magic, simply because they have never encountered it. Think about a seemingly simple thing like taking a photograph. When cameras first came into our world, were made and were used, there were people who were afraid that a part of their soul was taken with that camera. So they regarded it as a magical thing. Now we can explain that this is not the case. You won't lose a part of your soul. But back then, that is what people thought. Well, it is just technology, but they regarded it as a magical device. And that is, I think, a way of thinking, a connection that we lost. JC, you say to explain the unexplainable. Yes. People feel the need. Well, let me rephrase that. A certain group of people feel the need to basically explain everything, instead of just letting some things to be the wonder that they are. I mean, we don't need to know why we have the aurora borealis, but we can admire it nonetheless. And I bet that way back when Neanderthalers and other human-like races saw the aurora borealis, they would think that it was a sign of the gods. I mean, it's an incredible sight, and there are many things that we now regard almost as normal, that were regarded as magical or something from the gods, sorcery, etc., etc., that we don't see like that anymore. But some of these things were related to holidays, to events, to the deities that were celebrated. Things like a necklace made of teeth. There was a belief in that, that wearing a necklace made of teeth from your enemies would make you stronger, for example. And casting bones could give you visions, or could foretell your future, things like that. Those are often, I will say often, things you don't see anymore in our current society, but those all come from beliefs, from religions people had back then. And that is one of the reasons why I'm surprised that sci-fi stories hardly ever show anything about that. Because I can't imagine that we would lose that need in the future, that need to have the wonder, because essentially that's it. To have the wonder of a god that is a god, goddess, deity, whatever you want to call it, who plans out our life. I mean, there are billions upon billions of people in the world, so how on earth one God will plan all our lives? I have no idea. I never understood that, but they plan our lives. They the fun part, by the way, is that I have 3 deities who make the tapestry of life for all Sardinians. So yeah, there's that. But I can't imagine that hundreds or thousands of years into the future, humans don't have, and possible other races, don't have beliefs and religions anymore. How would people explain everything we have used and we are still using when they find things like that? And how, I don't know what I can't imagine that people just don't have a belief. The people in broader terms, I mean, the people as in humans don't have a belief anymore. Religions might change. That's a normal course. But to have no religion at all, to have no belief at all, that's, I don't know. I don't know. I think, if I recalled correctly, I think the Klingons in Star Trek displayed some belief. But that was more a belief as in saints, if you want to, I think. There's the other, what was it, Star Trek Enterprise, I think, with Jane, Captain Jane. There was the cook, who was a really different race. I think he also had a specific religion. I don't quite remember which one anymore. And Tess, I think, who ended up being his girlfriend or partner or something. She was also from a different race, if I recall correctly. I think she also had a belief, but it was just maybe touched upon very briefly, but not that much. But yeah, I can't imagine a future where beliefs and religions just don't exist anymore. That seems quite weird to me, but that's just me. So yeah, looking back at the creation of holidays and events and vacations in your own world, those are all things to think about. If you are writing a sci-fi story, do you still have certain holidays? I think in Star Trek Enterprise, Christmas was still celebrated. I think I vaguely remember there was a Christmas tree on the Enterprise at some point. But I'm not sure about that. Don't hold me to it. But think about these things. If a religion is completely gone, does it also mean that the holidays that were originally related to that religion, are those holidays gone? If not, why are the holidays not gone while the religion isn't there anymore? So yeah, I think I think I don't have any ideas anymore on how to create or more ideas, I should say, on how to create holidays and vacations in your world. Like I said earlier in the earlier session, vacations, think about the possibilities your characters have to actually travel in your world. We talked about that, about walking 20 kilometers, but you would need a place to sleep afterwards. Traveling with FTL or fast traveling, like JC said, that makes a huge difference if you have, if everybody has access to that. So yeah, there are lots of possibilities. Do you have transporters like they have in Enterprise, and do people use that to go to their holiday destination? So there are lots of possibilities to also think about how you can incorporate. Sorry, I thought I saw something weird outside. On how to incorporate vacations in your world. Okay, enough talk about that, because I've been talking way more than I expected. JC, you say you think the Klingons killed their gods. Oh, that's interesting. And oh yeah, that was Star Trek Voyager. Exactly, you remembered it correctly. Thanks for correcting me. You think so too, but you also believe that even though sci-fi shows, but you also believe that even though sci-fi shows are really reflections of our presence, of our present. Yeah, that could be it. Yeah. I mean, it's, but in our present, we have so many religions, we have so many beliefs. So why do we hardly see anything of that? I think Voyager had something. Stargate. I think Stargate had several things, because you could see that with other people, with other planets they visited. But yeah, it's strange how religion and belief seems to fall away in sci-fi stories. So keep that in mind, guys. If you guys and girls, guys and girls, and well, everything in between. If you are writing a sci-fi story, how are their beliefs? How are their vacations? How are their holidays? And what does that? How does that influence your story and your world? Okay, because I've been totally talking way too long. Let's do one more creative session, unless you all have questions left or ideas to share. I would love to hear that. Yeah, if you have questions left or ideas to share, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll go into the last creative session of today of 25 minutes, and then we can wrap things up and look to the future again. So yeah, 25 minutes of the sprint. Let me put on my and then we'll head into the last sprint of today. I might have to pop out because I'm awaiting a package, but I will be back really soon once I have received it. So let's go and let's start the timer. I wish you all a lot of fun creating and writing. I'll be back in a sec. And back again. And that's I and that is the end of our last sprint. How did it go for all of you? I have to say, one of my characters surprised me again. You know, that moment where you think that you know the professions of all your characters, even the minor characters, and you know where they are supposed to go and what they are supposed to do. And then you find out that one of the minor characters has a completely different profession than what you thought he had, which throws everything out of balance. Yeah, that just happened to me. So I'm sure I can make it work. Just don't know how yet, but I'll figure it out. But yeah, that's my current writing process. It's going splendidly. Other things are progressing as the already changed version should be progressing. So okay, I'll go with the flow for the moment. But yeah, my characters just currently seem to have the tendency to keep on surprising me on every corner. So I have no idea how this is going to turn out. And I had hoped to be able to finish this chapter by the end of the weekend. I've been working at it a long time already. But yeah, I'll need to discover a few things more. I think I'll just keep on writing and discover it during my writing. I think that's the best course of action right now. Let's see, because I already also posted a poll. Let's end it and let's see where we stand. Oh yeah, here it is. How was your creative month going so far? 33% says it could be better, could be quite better. 33% said I need a lot more creativity. I hope these sessions brought you that. And join me in the next sessions in 2 weeks, or join us in the Discord if you are looking for lots more creativity, because we will always help you there. And 16% of you said it's awesome, and 16% of you said it's okay. So I regard that as progress for all of you. Okay, JC, you said you missed a word, or in the earlier response. Okay, and for the sprint, let's go. Okay, Tissue said you're finishing up your last chapter for the morning. Excellent, excellent. And JC, that's great. You're writing in a notebook, so it's hard to calculate the words, but it was 2 pages with Tish and 1.5 pages here. That's great. You're making so much progress. I'm really proud of you. It's good to hear that. And Tish, you say you still have about 1/4 to edit, but you think it's time for a break. You did really good this morning. Awesome. Congratulations. And you have every right to be proud of yourself. We celebrate all progresses here, so when you might think that you don't have enough progress, just celebrate it. I mean, that is so important in this creative process. When you are writing a book, it is so important to look at your progress. Not only the amount of words in your manuscript, but also the editing you've done, story development, concept development, character development, world building, making maps, making drawings or art of your characters or whatever. It is all part of your creative process, and no matter how big or small, it's all progression, and that is what is important. And suppose you are stuck in your writing process, as in writing words in your manuscript. go into other parts of your writing process might actually help you get out of being stuck, get out of that writer's block. So yeah, it's that is why I feel it's important to celebrate all progress, and I know Dida feels it similarly, and that is why we set up the Golden Quill months last November. The next one is in September, out of the top of my head. Yeah. So yeah. Tish says, thanks, JC. And you love writing in a notebook. You usually keep your chapter summaries, character sketches, and any other story notes in your notebook. You love handwriting. I have to be honest. I mean, I keep my notes basically everywhere on every scrap of paper I can find. But in the end, I try to bring it all into Scrivener because I know myself, and I know things can get messy if I don't keep it in one project, in one project folder, and Scrivener helps me with that. So for me, it's important to eventually bring it into Scrivener to keep track of everything and to make sure that I have all the information available to me, because I know myself, and I just might I might lose information that might be vital to my story. So I mean, sometimes I think of things just as I'm about to go to bed, or even when I'm already half asleep, you know that moment? Being already half asleep, and then suddenly your brain is like, light bulb, I have ideas and you need to work with that now. Yeah, that happens to me. And those are the moments that I take my phone and I just jot down the ideas in the notes, or I dictate it, and then the next morning or a few days later I can process it in Scrivener and work with it with the things that I found. So yeah, it's notebooks do work for me, but not on a permanent basis. I really need to have everything in that Scrivener project, because otherwise I'll just get lost. I know myself. JC, you say you understand in this story characters' importance to the story are shifting as well, and you have a plan. Good. You're glad with what you're doing. Excellent. That's the most important. And Tish, you say characters are what push the story to you. You love characters. I mean, that is how shall I say that? Characters eventually drive the story. I mean, sure, you can have characters who have hardly any development, but in the end, characters drive your story, because how else would you have the story? So it's good to keep the characters as a focus point, or at least that's my feeling. And I recognize what Tish says, that characters are what push the story to you. I mean, I just told you guys that one of my characters just completely changed his profession, and I did not see that one coming. But if I look into it further, I think I will find that this new profession might actually be more helpful than his earlier profession that I had in mind. And the earlier profession, I think there will be something for someone else. And I think that this earlier profession might not even be useful with this mission that these people are on. So yeah, perhaps this is better, and I'll see where the characters take me. I mean, they've already gone from I plant them out the city in a field to, you know, get into things, to, oh no, but we are in the middle of the city, in the middle of the capital, and standing in front of a tavern. So what were your plans? No, we just screw that all up. And we take the story in a whole different direction. You didn't have a spice market, and you didn't have a small spice market yet. You do now. So yeah, that's that's what my characters do to me. But yeah, I love it anyway, and I think it makes the story better in the end, and that's what's important. Tissue say, yes, you keep it pretty neat in your notebook, but you have it in Scrivener as well, mainly for backup. Yeah, I mean, Scrivener for me is my go-to, and the notebooks are the initial. Well, they are one of the many sources I use. So yeah, I can relate. And as you say, true, you can't have a story without good characters. They actually push a plot forward. Excellent. Exactly. And it's, I mean, they can also intentionally keep your plots from moving forward. I mean, they can intentionally stall the plot. I think I have a few characters who might do that. We'll see about that. But yeah, it's essentially, characters are so important for your story, and it's, how shall I say that? The combination of the characters and the events in your story eventually make up your whole story, and it's the three things work together: your characters, your story plot, and your world building, because your world building influences your characters and your story plot. Well, they all influence each other. Let me just put it that way, that's easier. And in the end, the characters drive the story. Yeah, that's it. So I'm really, I noticed that I'm really starting to have problems with my mind, with my memory, and with my thoughts. So this was the last creative session, because I know that I have really troubles right now. I've been too long at it. But it's good. It's all for the better. Yeah, like I said, some surprises came up during these sessions. I'll have to see what I'm going to do with Harasin, but that's his name, Harasin. Not sure yet, but yeah, he's a surprise I wasn't counting on. We'll see how it goes. Other surprises are now pretty much worked out, so that's going good. Not sure if I will be able to finish this chapter by the end of the weekend, but I'll just keep on working on it when I've had a couple of hours rest, because I think I need that. Thank you everyone for joining. My next live stream is in 2 weeks again, I think. Let me check the calendar when that is exactly. The 28th of June. Yeah, that should be possible. If you have suggestions for a theme that we can talk about, then please leave it in the comments or post it in the Discord. That's always very welcome, and I will see what I can make of it. And I wish you all a very creative weekend and a lot of fun with all your creative projects and all other projects that you are working on. If you are looking for sparring partners or just some feedback on your world building or your story or anything else, or you just like to chat, just join us in the Discord. Link is in the description box below. And remember to check Tish's channel, subscribe to her as well. to be notified and to get the latest news of her book that's coming out September 15th. And be sure to like and subscribe this live stream, and subscribe if you want to be notified of the next live stream. I also post them in the Discord, so you can also go there. Bye bye.